NEMA has something to do with the building of electricity lines that are going through huge areas of Kenya like Laikipia to join them to a grid from Lake Turkana. The lines are going through in such fashion that they will destroy the ecosystem as we know it, and again a great opportunity for ecotourism has been lost. These lines could have been rerouted elsewhere. They could have taken a path along built-up areas, roads, so that they didn't go across, quote-unquote, the bush. NEMA has allowed this to happen. Again, because maybe, iko kitu, there's something small.
John, whoever is building roads, KETRACO, Kenya Electricity Transmission Company, NEMA, we are government agencies. So the issue of money changing hands really is not there, because there is no private interest in this thing. The road, if you say that, the electricity transmission line you talk about is of public interest. The conservation is of public interest because this is tourism for the economy. Both are important. So our work is to make sure that they coexist. The subject we are talking about now, we haven't made a decision on it yet. So we are talking about it. We have held a public hearing. Most of the decisions we make are actually based on public hearing and the views of the public. We have had a public hearing in Anyuki recently in the last 3 weeks or so. We are compiling the information which will help us make a decision. In other words, what I can say is that with patience, with complete, everybody is required and allowed to come and give their views, and then we use those to make a decision. NEMA and KETRACO are government agencies. The public who bring their views, we have the duty to actually sustain the environment on their behalf. We would like to make a decision that is favorable for everybody, and we are going to do just that.
NEMA, Professor, has something to do with people who are allowed to build restaurants, bars, that allow bands to play with no idea of sort of soundproofing in areas that are nominally residential areas, and there is a lot of noise pollution. They make a racket all night long, and they are licensed to make the racket, although the people who live around them are complaining. NEMA has failed us in this regard.
Thank you, John. I think we have license conditions. There is no license to make noise. There is a license to do your activity and conditions for noise. The conditions may limit when you can make a certain level of noise and the decibels. The level of noise is also associated with where you are. If you have a pub in the middle of the city, the noise levels there that are allowed are higher than that if you are in a residential area. Going about it, we have zoning. Nairobi is zoned. There are residential areas, there are commercial areas. So there are places...
I was trying to suggest to you earlier on, if you were listening to me, Professor, that this racket is coming from sort of dedicated residential areas where the noise shouldn't be high.
Yeah, but then NEMA...
The restaurant shouldn't be there, Professor. They shouldn't be there in the first place. There's no explanation for their being there. But they have been allowed to be there.
The liquor licenses are a different entity. NEMA
no, I'm talking about noise. We're still on the subject of noise.
Yeah. We have people on the ground that actually monitor the noise levels. When we license, or if we haven't licensed, NEMA officers are there checking adherence.
I'm glad you mentioned the officers, because that also is one of my, but you've taken it out of context.
Sure, yeah.
Some of your officers are masquerading as officers. It's like a policeman, sort of a crook putting on a police uniform and going to harass people. People harass people under the name of NEMA, but they're not your officers. So why don't you make sure that that doesn't happen by making them immediately recognizable to the general public?
That's correct, John. The imposters, people who are imposters and pretend to be NEMA officers, are complicating the whole scenario. And I would like to say that we have actually put a lot of notices, even in the newspaper, telling the public how to look and identify a NEMA officer. The labeling, we have even hotlines to call NEMA, because before you actually accept to deal with the person who is posing as an NEMA officer, you need first to confirm and identify the person positively. Right. We have put out notices saying, call this hotline, ask them to identify themselves fully with a badge, and they are there, so that we can actually know who we are dealing with.
Right.
But at the same time, also ask the public or whoever is the proprietor of the area which is making noise to make sure that before even you have a position to have posters coming to try and harass you, please adhere to the license conditions or to the noise regulations that we have.
Right. NEMA is this institution. This is two-pronged in this one.
Sure.
NEMA has something to do with me as a very well-off person who's saved all my life, and I've got a nice house in Runda, many rooms, my dream mansion. And because of some kind of mess that occurred in the process, we must knock it down. NEMA is also responsible for buildings being put up on close to rivers, close to waters, which are part of the source that's meant to feed Nairobi. All these flats, apartments that are going up are going to need water. NEMA allows people to build houses where they shouldn't build houses, and they destroy houses that they gave permission to be built in the first place.
John, NEMA has never destroyed any house, anybody's house. The far we go is court, and we can stop you that you don't go along with the development.
Professor, I went back to what would allow me to build a 6-bedroom mansion in the first place if I didn't know that I wasn't allowed to do so. Would I make this sort of multi-million shilling investment knowing that I'd made a mistake?
The law.
You are the authorizing authority.
The law is very...
You said so at the beginning.
Yeah, the law is very clear, John. An environment impact assessment gives you the opportunity to know what are the do's and don'ts in the area you have. There are many laws. Even when you go to the county council to get a plan approved, there are conditions that are there. Where you are going to build is also zoned, especially if you are in Nairobi. So you know that if you are building this place...
Professor, we're talking at cross purposes.
Yes.
Why were things allowed to get to this impasse? It takes a long time to build a house.
Yeah, but sometimes people are... There's a level of impunity.
What's
sometimes
happened to the officers? What's happened to the officers that are meant to be eagle-eyed, making sure that the law is upheld?
I said before, John, that we are not able to cover every other place. But wherever we are able to do it, if we give you a license, for example, to do with conditions, and you are with the impunity trying to go around that, you have a duty as a citizen yourself also to follow the rules. You cannot now come later and say, NEMA did not tell me this earlier, when it's very clear in your EIA license. And it's quite a common thing. A lot of the people who will build such structures are well informed enough to know what the laws of the land are. And what happens is that they later come around saying, I did not know, and that is not correct, John. It is not correct. People know, they'll build it testing. Right now, things evolve, John. Right now, we have an environment and land court. So going forward, I'd like to let you know that it's going to be increasingly more difficult for people to do just that. And in the past, some of the people you see we've stopped, and some people where building is going on and people are complaining, the most interesting thing to note is that we are always, most of the time, in court with these people. But the public may not know. We are always in court with a lot of these people once we note. But some people go ahead and anyway try to do that and later blame us.
Riverside structures,
yes.
Riparian building,
yes.
Building on the side of the road, again, huge sort of mansions rising up to the sky. They're not meant to be there. And you've allowed it to happen. NEMA has allowed it to happen.
That's not correct.
Well, do correct me.
Yeah.
I see them.
Yeah, we have regulations, and we do awareness creation. When
Professor, I'm asking you very directly,
yeah.
What is the explanation for the buildings that we see alongside riverbeds?
The explanation, John, is that they are illegal. The fact that they are there doesn't mean they are legally there. The good thing, John, is to ask the public or anybody who has their facility on the riparian zone, whether they know it's legal or not. They know that it is illegal. They probably are in court with us, and they are refusing to agree to the fact that it's an illegality. That is the position.
Meanwhile, construction continues.
We have a lot of ways to stop that construction from going, but a lot of the time when a case is in court and a decision has been made, for example, this is the status as we make a deliberation on the case, we follow the law. And whether it's continuing or not, it depends on whether it's in our favor or not in our favor. So basically that's the status. The legal status sustains until a decision is finally made.
What's become clear in this conversation is that you've made many things clear to me that weren't clear at the beginning, and for that I thank you. So, having been in the business for a year and waiting another 3, what are we to await of the exit line for Professor Geofrey Wahungu? You could have your contract renewed for another 4 years, but what are you planning to achieve of the things that we've discussed that will be a thing of the past?
I would like to see the profile of NEMA raised. I would like to see environmental sustainability mainstreamed in development. I would like to see NEMA achieving more and guiding Vision 2030. Because development that is not sustainable is going to be a problem for us in the future. I would like to see the public more aware about the importance of environment. I would like the public to know that the constitutional requirement that they are entitled to a clean and healthy environment, it is still themselves that who are going to really sustain that for themselves. They have to clean after themselves, they have to create the right environment for themselves is their duty. And what NEMA does is coordinate and guide. I like a stage where the common citizen understands what their role is in a sustainable environment.
Professor Geofrey Wahungu, thank you very much for coming on the GSO interview.
Thank you, John.